Nathan Vale never expected a dusty, collapsing warehouse on the edge of town to become the thing that changed his entire life, especially after it was dumped on him like some corporate joke for just $5,000. At the time, everyone laughed, including the CEO who practically shoved the deal into Nathan's hands, calling the property useless and expensive to maintain. And honestly, hearing how casually they tossed this place aside genuinely blew my mind, because this wasn't just an abandoned building, it was a symbol of failure, buried under rust, debt, and years of neglect. Nathan looked like a desperate man making a terrible decision. And people treated him exactly that way. But 8 months later, the same executives who mocked him were staring at headlines they could barely process, watching the junk warehouse become the foundation of a $1 billion empire. And trust me, the part nobody saw coming, that's where this story gets unbelievable. 2. Nathan Vale had spent years being the kind of employee companies quietly depended on but rarely respected. The reliable operations manager who fixed disasters nobody else wanted to touch, solved problems at impossible hours, and somehow still ended up overlooked when promotions came around. He worked inside a giant logistics corporation called Ashcroft Dynamics, a company obsessed with quarterly optics, polished boardroom presentations, and executives who loved sounding visionary while quietly squeezing every ounce of labor from people below them. Nathan knew the game because he had lived inside it for over a decade. He watched less qualified people rise simply because they knew how to speak confidently in meetings while he stayed buried inside real operational problems. And if we're being honest for a second, this part felt painfully realistic. Because everyone seems to know someone who quietly carries an organization while louder people collect the credit. At the center of that machine sat CEO Marcus Holloway, a man famous for expensive watches, polished interviews, and the kind of confidence that somehow convinced investors he could never be wrong. Marcus loved public image almost as much as he loved reminding employees that loyalty should be rewarded, even though, strangely enough, Nathan had never actually seen that happen. The relationship between Nathan and Marcus wasn't toppingly hostile at first, but there was always tension underneath the surface. Nathan had a habit of speaking plainly about operational mistakes, while Marcus preferred optimism wrapped in polished language. During internal meetings, Nathan occasionally pointed out problems executives ignored, especially around inventory infrastructure and regional shipping failures. Every single time, Marcus would brush it aside, call it temporary friction, or promise strategic fixes later. And then came the warehouse. Sitting 40 minutes outside the city, the facility had become a financial headache inside Ashcroft Dynamics. The building was old, partially damaged, and loaded with years of forgotten equipment nobody bothered sorting through. Executives referred to it like dead weight. Internal maintenance reports described electrical failures, water damage, and mounting costs. Entire departments joked about it being cursed because every proposed redevelopment plan somehow collapsed. Investors hated hearing about it, accountants hated funding it, and Marcus hated explaining why the company still owned something producing zero visible value. Nathan first encountered the property during a cost reduction review. What struck him wasn't the mess, it was the location. The warehouse sat near expanding freight routes and overlooked industrial land that looked suspiciously underdeveloped for how strategically placed it actually was. Something about it felt wrong in the best possible way, like everyone had stopped looking too soon. Bro, hearing this part genuinely made me stop for a second because people miss opportunities exactly like this in real life, not because they're invisible, but because everyone else already decided they're worthless. Nathan quietly began studying records after work. Old permits, infrastructure maps, land ownership filings, nearby shipping expansion proposals. What started as curiosity slowly became obsession. Piece by piece, he realized something executives completely overlooked. Several massive transportation contracts were scheduled to reshape the region within the next year, meaning industrial property near those routes could explode in value. Overnight, the warehouse itself looked terrible, sure, but the positioning? That was a different story entirely. Still, Nathan said nothing. For not because he lacked confidence, but because experience taught him something dangerous about corporations. If leadership senses value, they take control immediately and pretend the idea was theirs all along. So he kept researching quietly while everyone else treated the warehouse like contaminated garbage. Then, during one tense budget meeting, Marcus casually announced plans to dump the property entirely. The room laughed. Someone joked that they should pay another company to take it. And that's when Nathan made the decision nobody around him understood. He asked if he could buy it himself. The silence inside that room changed instantly. Not curiosity, not concern, pure amusement. Marcus smiled, and that smile would end up costing him more than he could ever imagine. The moment Nathan Vales signed the paperwork, people inside Ashcroft Dynamics treated him like a cautionary tale. Word spread fast through office gossip, executive circles, and industry contacts. To them, he had just burned $5,000 on a collapsing industrial graveyard while voluntarily inheriting years of hidden problems. Marcus Holloway especially seemed entertained by it, quietly allowing the story to circulate because, from his perspective, Nathan had practically embarrassed himself without needing any help. And honestly, this part felt painfully familiar, because people love laughing at risks when failure seems obvious. Nobody celebrates vision early. They celebrate outcomes after pretending they understood them all along. What nobody knew was that Nathan had already started moving with terrifying precision. Every evening after work turned into research, cleanup, and planning. He walked through leaking hallways with flashlights, mapped damaged sections by hand, cataloged forgotten equipment, and hired small independent crews instead of expensive contractors. 5. He sold scrap materials nobody realized still held value, negotiated aggressively for repairs, and quietly converted abandoned storage sections into usable operational space. Bit by bit, the warehouse stopped looking dead. It still looked rough, sure, but underneath the decay, something dangerous was beginning to form. And then came the first twist. Regional transportation rumors Nathan discovered months earlier suddenly became public. Freight corridors expanded, distribution demand surged, industrial investors scrambled for land near shipping access points, and overnight, attention shifted toward exactly the area everyone had ignored. Suddenly, Nathan's junk warehouse sat in one of the most strategically valuable zones in the region. I genuinely couldn't believe how fast perception flipped, because this is exactly how markets behave. People dismiss something for years and then panic the second someone else proves it matters. But success never arrives quietly. The same executives who laughed started asking questions. Investors connected to Marcus began circling. Competitors suddenly appeared near the property, making suspicious offers and pushing strange legal inquiries about land, boundaries, and permits. Nathan realized something uncomfortable. People were no longer mocking him, and they were watching him. And Marcus Holloway, the CEO who once treated the warehouse like corporate trash, had finally started paying very close attention for reasons Nathan was about to understand the hard way. Marcus Holloway did not like losing, but what bothered him even more was the idea that someone beneath him had seen value where he saw failure. The moment industry reports started mentioning Nathan Vale's warehouse location, Marcus stopped laughing. 6. Publicly, he acted calm, polished, untouchable. Privately, though, something shifted. He began asking legal teams strange questions about the property transfer, requested archived maintenance documents nobody had cared about for years, and quietly contacted investment partners to assess what the land could realistically become. And bro, hearing this part genuinely made me stop, because the psychology here feels painfully real. Some people can tolerate success, just not when it belongs to someone they underestimated. Nathan noticed the pressure building almost immediately. City inspectors suddenly appeared more often than expected. Permit reviews slowed down for vague reasons. Contractors received strange calls warning them the project had uncertain backing. Even financing conversations became weirdly difficult, like invisible hands kept nudging doors shut right before they opened. At first, Nathan wondered if it was coincidence. Then patterns started stacking up too perfectly to ignore. But Nathan had spent years surviving corporate politics. He recognized obstruction when he saw it. Instead of retreating, he pivoted. He transformed sections of the warehouse into scalable fulfillment hubs for independent manufacturers struggling with shipping bottlenecks. Small businesses signed on first, desperate for affordable logistics support near expanding freight routes, and then mid-sized companies followed, and revenue climbed faster than expected, and investors who ignored him months earlier suddenly wanted meetings by month 7. The warehouse had evolved into a rapidly expanding infrastructure platform connecting suppliers, storage, and transportation in ways bigger competitors moved too slowly to copy. And then came the moment Marcus never expected. Nathan secured a partnership announcement that set industry headlines into chaos, a deal positioning his operation at the center of a logistics boom worth billions. 7. The same CEO who sold him junk for $5,000 was now staring at reports estimating Nathan's company value in the hundreds of millions, climbing fast. But Marcus wasn't done, because instead of admitting he made a mistake, he decided to take something back he believed never should have left his hands. Marcus Holloway moved fast, and the first sign of trouble arrived in a thick legal envelope stamped with language designed to intimidate. Ashcroft Dynamics suddenly claimed the warehouse sale contained material procedural irregularities, arguing the transfer happened under incomplete internal valuation standards. Translation, they wanted it back, not because the property mattered 8 months earlier, but because Nathan Vale had turned what they mocked into something powerful enough to threaten their ego and balance sheet at the same time. Honestly, this part was unbelievable in the most frustrating way because people suddenly become obsessed with fairness. The second someone else starts winning, Nathan read every page twice, and then a third time. Instead of panicking, he started connecting dots. The same executives who laughed at him had signed approvals. Internal communications openly described the property as a liability. Maintenance records proved Ashcroft spent years trying to abandon responsibility for it. Worse for Marcus, several archived meeting notes casually mocked Nathan for buying the place at all. In trying to humiliate him months earlier, they accidentally documented their own bad faith. Nathan didn't respond emotionally. That's what made this next part so satisfying. He complied. Every request, every document demand, every audit, every hearing, malicious compliance at its absolute finest. 8. Nathan's legal team produced records so detailed they exposed the entire story publicly. Timestamps, signatures, executive comments, financial assessments, internal memos, even joking language from meetings where leadership treated the warehouse like disposable garbage. Investors saw it. Business media picked it up. Suddenly, Marcus wasn't facing a quiet dispute anymore. He was facing humiliation. And karma moved quickly. Shareholders began questioning executive judgment. Analysts criticized leadership for dumping strategic assets out of arrogance. Potential partners backed away from Ashcroft while Nathan's company exploded in visibility. The attempted takedown had done the exact opposite. It transformed Nathan into proof that vision beats ego. Then came the moment nobody expected. Marcus quietly requested a meeting, not to apologize, to negotiate, because the empire he laughed at was now worth more than he could afford to ignore. 8 months earlier, Nathan Vale looked like the guy who made the worst decision of his life, and somehow that became the exact reason he won. Bro, stories like this genuinely hit, because entitlement collapses fast. When reality catches up, if this comeback shocked you, stick around, because the next twist gets even crazier.